Very good morning, all. We'll wait for another 5 minutes. Let the participants join the meeting and we'll start in a couple of minutes. Thank you.
Good morning. I have a small request to the organizer. Can they allow me to work as a co-host so that I can share my PPT?
Sure, sir. Good morning, dear participants. Welcome on day 5 of 1 week online induction refresher program on Internet of Things approved and funded by All India Council for Technical Education, New Delhi and IST. Today, we are fortunate to have Dr. PJ Kulkarni sir as a resource person. It's my pleasure to introduce him. Dr. Kulkarni has completed his PhD in Electronics Engineering from Walchand College of Engineering, Sangli in 1993. He was graduated way back in the year 1979 from College of Engineering, Pune. He has a rich experience of 36 years in the field of teaching. He has he has been working since 1980 to 2017 at Sangli Walchand. He holds the research experience of 4 years. He has been worked as principal and deputy director at Walchand College of Engineering, Sangli. He has research interest in the area of image processing, computer vision, pattern recognition, artificial intelligence, and web mining. In all, he has published more than 13 papers in reputed international and national journals. Under his guidance, 9 students have received PhD and 4 students are in progress. Also, total 96 students have completed post-graduation in engineering. He has worked as a chairperson for National Research Symposium from 2016 to 2019. He is a life member of Computer Society of India. Also, he was principal investigator for AICTE's Research Promotion Scheme. He has received grants of more than 90 lakhs individually under MODROC from 2004 to 2013. Dr. Kulkarni received distinguished position in Asia Pacific Conference for contribution to excel in academics in 2004. He has received Samajashri and Merit Award in 2001 by ICME. Such a great personality is with us for the session on linear and nonlinear regression in machine learning and its applications in IoT. I welcome you, sir, and request you to start the session. Over to you, sir.
Good morning to all of you. I hope I am audible to all of you.
Yes, sir.
Please allow me to share my screen. I'm not a co-host right now. I'm unable to share my screen. Can you please arrange for it?
I request Dr. Darekar, sir, to allow today's guest to share his PPT.
Yes, madam. Please moment.
Till the time the arrangements are done, let me get some feedback from you people. How many participants are there today? If the count is more than 15, 16. Hope I am audible.
Yes, sir, we are able to listen.
Hello, sir. Hello.
Yeah, please.
Sir, actually, the number of participants are 80 to 100, but active participants present over here are approximately ranging from 20 to 40, sir. And I
Okay.
think as, due to Sunday, few of the participants may join late.
Okay.
Let us see how they will continue. Okay, sir. One more point is that from your screen, you can directly present now, and you can start with your presentation, sir. Will it be possible for you?
There is no problem at my end, but when I go for my present now, my screen is not visible here. Your screen is only seen here.
Okay, then.
Okay, is it? Let me once again check at my end.
Yes, please, sir.
That you allowed my screen to come up, because when I go for sharing, it doesn't say anything on that. I'm not a co-host right now.
Just a moment, sir. I will try.
Sir, by default, you are the co-host. Actually, you just present the screen and pin out your screen to the main screen, so you can able to see also and you can able to present also.
That's the reason when I go for clicking on the share, it doesn't get activated.
No, no, go don't go to the share, sir.
Okay.
Eh, at your screen there is a three dots are there.
Yeah.
Besides that, there is a present your presenter. Just click on the present.
Just a minute. Just a minute. Just a minute. Let me see. Uh,
The left, right hand bottom, sir.
right and bottom. No, yeah, I get those three, and
Yeah.
there is a setting.
Beside,
And
no, no, don't click on that particular three dots. Beside that three dots, there is a
present now.
present. Yeah, present now.
Yeah, I clicked the present now.
Click and enter screen.
Yeah, I said entire screen.
Yeah, right now, just share the screen. There is a one pop-up window is there. Just share that.
So that's what I'm saying. That share is not activated at my end. I can't click on the share.
Okay, wait a minute, sir. I will just check with the director, sir, Dr. Director, sir.
Sir, the moment you go with the entire screen, when you have that window is there, sir. Window in window are opening. Okay, sir.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
click on that, sir.
Yeah,
You
now
click on
you are
that.
sharing, sir.
Yeah, now
are
you are seeing, sir. Now you are seeing, sir.
Now you are visible, sir.
My PPTs.
Yes, sir.
Your
Clearly.
PPT is
Yes, sir.
visible.
I have just presented your presentation. I have started with it. If it is compatible with you, we can continue.
No. What I meant is that if I get a control to share my own PPTs, it would be better.
Okay,
Yes,
then
yes.
I think from your side only you will have to start presenting, sir. It will
So
be
I'm
more effective.
simply listen to me carefully. What I'm saying is that I'm in a position to share my screen, but the button is not activated. It seems I'm not in a position. Can you see my screen right now?
No.
No,
No, sir.
Because not I have not shared it. I have not shared it. Please
Sir,
allow me to get my screen shared.
sir,
Very good. Very
sir,
good, sir.
you have your own control. You just press the button, press now, present now. You go with the option entire screen. After that, you will see there is a window in window opening, sir. You
Window in
click on
window
that.
opened. It is opened.
You click on that, sir. You select it.
Yeah, I selected it, madam. I selected it.
Once
I
you
am doing
select,
it
then
regularly. I am doing it regularly. Today, what happened that the window in the window has got one more called share and the cancel. If I click on the share, it doesn't come. It doesn't come. I think possibly this is your screen.
Yeah, sir. I have. Sir, you have any desk on your computer?
What is that? Please repeat.
Any desk? That is a software.
No.
Oh, okay, okay, fine.
sir, you can check by present now, and you can select a window so that presentation may start.
Okay, I'll do. I'll check it once again.
Instead of entire screen, just select a window.
I selected a window, and is
Click
it?
on your presentation, sir.
Yeah, is it all working now? I started from my end. Is it?
No, sir. Still, we are not able to see this. On another window, please open your presentation, sir.
Yeah, I opened it, madam. I opened it.
Yes, sir.
I opened it.
On
I
clicking
opened it.
present now, if you have selected a window, you have to select that particular presentation window, sir.
Hmm, let me.
And you have to click on share.
The problem at my end is that the share is not activated. It is disabled.
So kindly check whether there are some pop-ups.
Ah. Just a minute. Just a minute.
If you allow the pop-ups, then it will get activated, sir. I request the participants to please stay connected with us. We'll start the session soon once the technical problem gets resolved.
Kulkarni sir, can you log out and log in once again, sir, so that it may resolve? Hello, Kulkarni sir.
Sir, just a minute. I'm logging in once again. Just a minute.
Yes, sir, please. Yes, sir. Now your screen is visible to us, sir. Your screen is visible, sir. Presentation is also visible now. Linear and non-linear regression analysis and case studies.
Yes, sir. We are to.
Hello,
Yes, sir. Your screen is visible to us, sir.
my screen is visible. Okay,
Yes, sir.
okay.
And now
So,
presentation is also visible now, sir.
okay, okay.
Fine, sir.
So, is it okay, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. It is visible, sir. Clearly. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Good morning to all of you once again. So, I'd be very happy to share with you my experiences working in machine learning. Possibly some of the participants might question that when the entire focus is on IoT, that is Internet of Things, where is the machine learning coming in between? So in a preamble, I give a very good connect between the IoT and the machine learning. So I'll be giving you the details on that also. But since the entire day today is being allotted to me more on the machine learning, I request each one of you to please have details on all these presentation. This will be of a great interest to all of you because IoT and the machine learning are tightly coupled. They're highly tightly coupled. And in that situation, getting only the IoT is not enough. Getting the data from the IoT, how do we process it is more important. And that processing has to have some intelligence embedded into it, so that we look for that intelligence in such a way that this is as if the human being is working on all that kind of data and making a good decision and giving you the right answers, right analysis of it appropriately. So in that particular context, I'd be taking you forward. As I stated that IoT and machine learning are tightly coupled, this whereupon the IoT is thought appropriately to be deployed at various places. Geographically, at various places, we have different sensors. They continue to generate data, and the generated data is massive in volume, and it comes to a certain place from the millions of devices. This is in general the IoT situation. Now, when I look for the data coming at a particular place and would like to analyze the data and make some sense regarding what that data is. Of course, the meaning of getting what that data is not enough. We are more interested in understanding that given a data, what do we do with the data? And for that matter, we have to understand something in the data. We need to learn from the data and get something ready for predicting, estimating, and recommending appropriately for some future similar contexts. And for that matter, machine learning is definitely called for. Machine learning is powered by data and it generates from the data inside. In the sense that it tries to understand what that data is. It tries to understand the behavior of the data. So the machine learning uses past behavior to identify the patterns and builds models that help predict future behavior and the events. These future behaviors are more important because in the machine learning, what we learn from the past is to be applied for future. And for that matter, when past experiences are appropriately collated and we make a predictions regarding some part in the future, we must be in a position to make our futuristic predictions which would be acceptable. And for that matter, we have to have more of a deep understanding of how learning takes place with huge data given to it. And hereupon, we focus more on the machine learning part of it. In the morning session, I'd be taking you to a small tour whereupon we make a very simple estimates regarding the futuristic estimations. We make a kind of very simple mathematical or a logical platform to understand to start with. Slowly, we may get deep into it, and depending upon your interest, I would be in a position to share my experiences with you for satisfying your queries. So this in general will be the total flow of my presentation to you. I have a small appeal to all of you that as and when you find that there is some kind of a gap between what I'm intended to bring it to you and what is that actually you are getting it from me. If you feel that I need to be interrupted, I give up entire freedom. Please interrupt me. Please see that you take up anything with great understanding so that the entire session today will be of great useful part to you. IoT is connected to AI and ML. I now use AI in between also. AI is artificial intelligence. It is basically a collection of two words, artificial and intelligence. It clearly indicates that it is not a natural. It is created by something which is not by the human being, but it is where the machines or someone other than human is making use of it. And what it does, machines' ability to understand, machines' ability to reason, machines' ability to plan is worked out in such a way that all that understanding, reasoning, planning will be considered nearly at par with the human's ability. So this artificial intelligence, for that matter, is something which is trying to mimic the human behavior. And when I say it is trying to mimic the human behavior, it means that it gives a kind of an intelligence with the machine, which could be considered as part of the human beings. So artificial intelligence is the one which brings out the intelligence could be at par with the human intelligence. And with such an artificial intelligence, different capabilities being given up to the machine, the AI powered capabilities and the IoT data can be appropriately taken up forward. Because the IoT data needs to be taken up in such a way that this data is having some sense for its processing further. So this data which is generated from the IoT is to be transformed, is to be analyzed, is to be visualized, and it should be taken in such a way that it is used properly further by the machine as per certain expectations, such that now the machine would be having the intelligence embedded into it, and the machine takes up the human intelligence and tries to bring out some of those expectations which could be considered otherwise a bit difficult for the human being to take up. So this is the entire ecosystem. When I say about the machine understanding a data, machine is trying to understand the behavior of the data. So the behavior of the data is basically a model. So whenever I'm using the word a model is basically characterizing the behavior of someone. It is where we are looking for the learning associated with the data. It is where we are also looking for what is the data distribution into it. And we'd like to make use of the distributions. We'd like to make use of the random distribution to start with to get it appropriately fitted into what is known to us. So we may say it like this, that a decision is something like which is equally likely. Everything that you see in life is equally likely. Of course, this could be a very worst case situation. Not that everything that you see in life is equally likely. Many of the events are said that they are known to have their occurrences more likely than the others, which means that all the events in the scenario are not equally likely. Only few of them they are more likely, and many of them they are not likely. And such a thing is called as the normal. So the normal behavior is something which said that it is giving you all those occurrences which are believed to be more like coming at the average or the mean. And only few of those events they get deviated from the mean of it. And for that matter, equally likely distribution is only which we call as a worst case situation, and such a situation is usually taken up for carrying out some of the experiments only in the laboratory kind of those environment. But the real life environment is a normal. Real life environment is a normal, and the one which would like to take up for synthesis, or which would like to really make use of this for simulation, and that in the laboratory, we may look for a data which could be equally likely. Now, what is that we are taking up with this data then? Now, we look for the data, we bring up from the data certain proposition. We work out from the data certain facts. We take up those facts in such a way that these facts are verified. These facts are the one which have been taken up into its verification in the past by the appropriate body, and without any further cross validation of it, we may make good use of it future. So a predicate part in the logical is something which indicate that we are making use of some knowledge representations. I may bring it to you with small example. Not to go for getting certain which is related to real life examples, I'll bring a small example saying that if A, then B is a situation. If A, then B is the situation. So I'm carrying out this as a particular statement saying that if A occurs, B also occurs. Then I join this statement with one more, and there answer that if B occurs, C also occurs. So my first statement was if A, then B, but I added to this one more statement, and then I said that if B, then C. These are the only two statements, and with only two statements, now the machine infers, machine gets a reasoning, and then it says that if A, then B is given, if B, then C is also given, it means that though it is not given, if A, then C. So this is very simple way of reasoning. It's a very simple way of logical reasoning. So given the two statements, can we infer? Can we make certain reasoning out of it? And can we make use of this for some futuristic development? So that is where those logical statements are more important. And we make use of those logical statements in the programming. And that is where the intelligence embedded in the machine starts coming in. So logical propositions, logical predicates, and the power with this for reasoning and inferring is much more important. We may also take a different curve, and a different curve is that instead of going only for a logical, we may make use of a mathematical models. And these mathematical models, we may consider a simple model like a linear. One varies linearly with the other. It's a simple thing. One varies linearly with the other. Is a very simple to start with. Second thing would be one varies non-linearly with the other. And based on that, if we understand such a behavior of the data, we may call this data either as a linear data or a non-linear data. I believe that my explanation to you is accepted. If you feel that there is some more description needed for this, you may interrupt me. You can raise your hand and get some more information. However, I would be also available to interact with you for satisfying some of your queries, maybe at the end of this seminar, or wherever you find that it is needed, I am available for that. Let's assume that given a data, which is a huge data, and this gets spread over a number of years, and this has got a certain relationship worked out of it, for which we need to plot the data. Let's say in this particular situation where I am saying that this is a scatter plot utility available in the Excel. Excel form would allow you to get these illustrations for the data variation. Let's say in this situation, for a certain data which is collected over few years, 1998 to 2012, is shown over here. And in that situation, we come to know that variation of the data over those years has given you a certain increasing trend of the data, in the sense that as the years increase, data also increase. So this is where I made use of saying that data increase is directly proportional to year. Of course, somewhere over here you may find that there is a small dip into the variation. These minor variation, if debarred, we feel that, yeah, as an average, the data increase is in proportion with the year. So this is a simple way of looking at it, and I could make use of a scatter plot utility available in the Excel sheet to make this illustration. These are more important for us to understand the behavior of the data. Going to the next part of it, this data being given, the trade being given, the model being worked out, the model in the sense that it is either a linear or a non-linear model being worked out, we would like to work out from this certain predictions. And the prediction problems and their solutions, they come across some important aspects. One is called as a problem, which is called as a P problem. A P problem where a linear, non-linear model are usually thought of, and we work out the relationship between one and the other with a certain mathematical relationship. The P is a polynomial. P problem, the P is indicating that it's a polynomial problem. And since the polynomial is a mathematically well proven, the kind of the dependency on one over the second, we can rework on it at any different other points and work out something which was not expected earlier to be appropriately computed, and that computed part could be then considered as the predictions. NP problem is the second. As NP problem, this says that it is a non-deterministic polynomial problem. In the P problem, when it is a polynomial problem, the relationship in a mathematical form is known. Whereas in the NP problem, the relationship in a mathematical form is not well known. And that's why it's a non-deterministic polynomial, saying that either you get a data for which you understand its behavior for a certain slot or the duration of it. At some of the duration, you find that there is no relationship found. There is nothing like a relation could be estimated, and that the reason that in order to estimate those relationships, we may make use of some kind of the artificial fittings. And since these artificial fittings are all that which is much away from the real or the natural, we consider this to be applicable only for certain situations, whereupon whatever we have considered as the match for fixing it with the gap, if it works well, my problem gets solved. If it is not so, the problem is not solved. And under the situation, the problem solution is not more important. We are looking for a solution first, and then we'd like to optimize the solution, or we'd like to improve on the solution. So we look for the solutions in these NP problems which are not the optimal solution, but we look for the near optimal solutions. What they do, they give you predictions, they give estimations, they provide you the recommendations. And for that matter, if at all these three predictions, estimation, and the recommendations are appropriately provided by the machine, then we say that the intelligence is embedded into the machine. I call this artificial intelligence embedded into the machine. In that situation, the first and the foremost part in giving the learnability to the machine, the topic comes of a regression. This is a method of modeling a target value based on independent predictors. I'm going to give a very detailed discussion on this because this is a beginning in the machine learning, and I hope that irrespective of your background, you might be coming from mechanical, civil, or might be from some other background which might be not engineering also. In that situation, the beginning of understanding, giving the learnability to the machine is more important. And I'll be giving you all the details in a quite a crisp manner. But if you feel that you need some more description on it, I am available to give you those kind of a thing. Please interrupt me for that in between. You may either write in the chat box, or you can unmute your microphone and raise your query. Possibly satisfying your query at the time when the query gets worked out, it would be more appropriate. So please exercise that kind of opportunity and interrupt me in between if it is really called for. So this is the method which is used for forecasting and finding out some of the causes and the effect relationship between the variables. So this regression is more important for that matter. So this is more on that forecasting. It is more on finding out sometimes causes and the effect relationship. And for that matter, how regression works, how given your data is modeled, and we would like to make use of that model for carrying out those forecasting. This is something which is of more interest to us, and it would remain of a great interest forever. And techniques differ based on the number of independent variables and the type of relationships. These are the type of relationships between what I can call as between the independent variable and the dependent variable. Let me give you all the description in a step-by-step manner further. So either I may take up this independent and dependent variable to have a relationship which is a linear, a simple linear, or it could be a non-linear. We may also look forward for getting those different independent variables connected to a dependent variable, and it is in that situation I get a multiple independent linear components deciding one dependent variable, or it could be a multiple non-linear dependent variable deciding one at the output. So in that situation, we have many such options to take into account. Slowly, we'll take up that, and we'll also attach a certain typical application for it. Until the application is discussed, I mean to say that the theory will not be much more considered for understanding it very well. Let's open up the linear regression part. This is a very commonly used technique in the statistics. A simple regression, it quantifies linear relationship between one predictor variable and a response variable. As stated earlier, in the multiple linear regression, we have to have a quantifying relationship between a several predictor variables and a response variable. In the sense that a response variable has got its bearing with multiple several independent variables. But in a simple, I get one predictor variable and one response variable. We'll be taking up the examples for two of them independently further. In the linear estimate part of it, a simple application of this would be like interpolation. Let me take you to my first slide, whereupon I said it like this, that in this particular scatter plot, I hope that you see the scatter plot. And this scatter plot, I could see hardly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different discrete points. I do not know what happened to in between. I do not know what happened between these 2 points. But for that matter, if at all I understand that these points are likely to be joined by a straight line, if they get joined by a straight line, I make use of this straight line as a model to estimate what could be in between. Are you getting me? So this is called as, I would like to make use of these 2 extreme points to be joined by a straight line, and all those details in between which are not actually given by the data, but they are estimated by making use of the linear relationship between what is available on this x-axis versus what you get on the y-axis. So this is a simple way of going for what is called the interpolation. So given the 2 extremities, and if they get joined properly, the way they get joined help you to work out something in between using the model. So when we work out something in between, it is the interpolation. Take up the situation that given these 2 points, I joined it, but I wanted to know what it could be at this point. What it could be at this point. Of course, such a data was not given to me. I wanted to know that given this point and at this point, and they also get joined by a straight line, I wanted to know what is happening after this, in the sense that I could get a data after 2010, but I wanted to know what would happen if the trend continues, what it would be in 2012. This is not given to me. So given is something from up to 2010, what I do is that I could extend it using the model which I considered. A linear line being considered appropriate fitting for this, then the linear line could be extended further, and this linear line being extended further will allow me to predict what it would be at 2012. Am I correct? So when I'm going to predict something which is beyond my data points, this is an extrapolation. If I'm working something within the points, it is an interpolation, and if it goes beyond that, it is an extrapolation. I hope I made my justification acceptable to you. So going forward, let's take up a situation. I take up one real life example. The example said that usually advertising spending and the revenue has got a certain relationship. What does it say is like this, that we like to say that spending on the advertisement is usually giving you more returns. It gives you more revenue. And we wanted to say that if you have more of the advertising spending, you can expect getting more revenue. It means that advertising spending has got a linear increasing relationship with the revenue. More the advertising spending, you may expect more revenue. So I am making use of this particular example to model a linear line. And for the linear line, in our school days, we have taken up the typical linear line estimation using the mathematical function called y is equal to intercept plus x times the slope. Y is the data points on the y-axis. X is what I could say is available on my x-axis. Intercept is the what I could say is whereupon on y-axis with the slope being 0, what I get is called as the intercept on the y-axis. So when the slope is 0, what I get on the y-axis is the intercept. And the slope is 1, which indicated the way that y varies with the x. So this is already we have studied, and I would like to make use of this as a model. A linear relationship model is assumed here. So in that situation, I am making use of this real life example to be reformulated. And when I reformulate it, it says it like this, that revenue is equal to B0 plus B1 times advertising spending. Advertising spending is my input, revenue is my output. Revenue is on the y-axis, advertising spending is on x-axis. So advertising spending multiplied by the slope plus added with the intercept on the y-axis is my revenue. So let's try to interpret. So coefficient B0 here is representing total expected revenue when the spending is 0. When the advertising spending is 0, if the revenue is available, it means that irrespective of the spending on the advertisement, you continue getting the revenue. And this happens to be, in this situation, the intercept on the y-axis. A coefficient B1 is representing average change in the total revenue when spending is increased by 1 unit. So if the spending is increased by 1 unit, what happens to the revenue is given up by the slope. B1 is negative, representing that if you have more of the advertising spending, you get a less revenue. Is it accepted? Oh, but this is the situation I just indicated, that when B1 is negative, this is the situation that with more of a spending, the revenue goes down. B1 close to 0. The slope close to 0 representing that spending has a little effect on the revenue. It means that whether you carry out any expenditure or you do not carry out the expenditure, your revenue remains more or less same. B1 is positive, is indicating that with more of a spending, you continue getting more of a revenue. I think this is the formulation of the problem and its interpretation appropriately. With this, company would then take a decision either to decrease or increase spending based on what the value of B1 is. I think this is where we make use of learning to come in the machine or somewhere in the competition, so that the critical part of making an estimation would be done easily. Let's look at the second example. The second example is where we are looking for a drug dosage versus the blood pressure of a patient. We know that a patient with a blood pressure, if he continues taking a dosage appropriately, blood pressure becomes a normal. If dosage is not taken up, blood pressure continues to increase. Now, this is being formulated using a linear relationship. So, as we formulated the earlier problem, the newer problem here, it then says that a blood pressure is equal to B0 plus B1 times the dosage. Coefficient B0 represents here the expected blood pressure when the dosage is 0. So when this is 0, blood pressure, what you get is the intercept on y-axis, and this represents the expected BP when the dosage is 0. Coefficient B1 represents change in BP. B1 indicate the change in BP with respect to dosage. Again, taking up the different scenarios, what happens if the B1 is negative? If the B1 is negative, it represents that an increase in dosage is associated with decrease in BP. Increase in dosage decreases the BP. When the B1 is close to 0, B1 is close to 0, it means that whether you take a dosage or you do not take a dosage, your BP continues to remain appropriately a constant value. And when a B1 is positive, indicating that with increasing the dosage, BP also increases. BP also increases. So this is how the problem has been appropriately formulated, and we have worked out the interpretation. So depending upon the value of B1, we may then look for whether the doctor is to give you a recommendation to increase the dosage or to decrease the dosage appropriately. I hope these examples are readily well understood by each one of you. Can you just respond to me? So that my lecturing to you is not that way lecturing, it would be a kind of interaction. So will you please give me oral feedback regarding whether you consider this as a real life examples?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
it's crystal clear.
Yeah. So whereupon I am saying that this dosage for a person, or in the previous example where I say about the advertising spending, in all these situations, the data gets collected not at one point. The data gets collected at many points. And from those many points, when it comes to a common point, at a common point, we would like to make a certain decisions. And these decisions, as I stated, are basically more on the recommendation, estimations, or the way we would like to predict something. In that situation, if everything what we like to predict, estimate, and recommend gets accepted, it means that the model we have created for a recommendation, expectation, and the predictions are appropriate. And to make it work appropriately, we need to train the machine. We need to give the learnability to the machine. So let's take up this example for them. So given either the BP or the revenue versus the advertising expenditure as the kind of the scenario, we'd like to make use of a scatter plot utility. In that situation, what is that we are going to get on the x-axis is all what is called the independent variable. What we plot on the y-axis is a dependent variable. Why it is dependent? Because it depends on the input, and the input here is plotted on the x-axis. So these are all those blue points which indicate that at different intervals on x-axis you get a certain outcome, and all those blue points, they indicate that this is basically calling for a scatter plot. I do not know whether I need to draw a line crossing all those points appropriately, but as an average I could take it like this, that if I draw a line, which is a red line shown over here, which is crossing the extremities in such a way that they go between all those points in such a way that the average estimation for a point, blue point, on that of a red point would be something acceptable, because the average error is being thought of, and that error is the one which indicate that what is this blue dot deviated from the red line. If I look for this blue dot deviated from the red line, and if I look for this blue dot deviated from the red line, one is positive here, second is negative here. And then I could estimate that this positive error and the negative error would possibly give me an error which would be near to zero, and it would be acceptable. I'm saying that this is my hypothesis. I'm saying that such an error is acceptable is my hypothesis. How to make it more acceptable? We'll look into it in detail further. So this is my scatter plot. Let's look at that linear regression equation. What I've shown to you on the y-axis is the dependent variable. I write this as a predicted variable. This depends on the constants, which is called as the intercept on the y-axis. I write here this as a a0. This depends on the slope. I write the slope as a a1. In that situation, my earlier formulation, a mathematical formulation, could be rewritten as a predicted y is equal to a0 plus a1 times x. Okay. In this situation, this predicted y is one which is all available to me only on the red line. Please understand, when I use this predicted y, the predicted y is all those points which are on the red line. And which are the actual? The actual one are the one which is all those blue lines or the blue points. So let me go back to this. So all those blue points are the actual. And what is my prediction? My prediction is that it's projection on this red line. So this is my error. This could be my error. This could be my error. These are the different errors that I get because I had drawn a line in between all those points in such a way that the average error would be near to zero and it would be acceptable. So I'm once again saying that all the blue points are the actual, whereas all those points that I could get otherwise on the red line are the estimated or the predicted, which means that a predicted and the actual will have certain error. I need to draw a line in such a way that the average error comes to zero. Average error comes to a certain acceptable limit. It means that the line is to be drawn in such a way that the slope of the line, the intercept of the line is to be tuned appropriately such that the average error would be acceptable. Okay, and this is where the regression comes in. The error in that situation is written up in terms of MSE. MSE is calling for mean square error. So what it says that is a mean of square of a predicted y minus the y. What is y? Y is all those blue dots. Predicted y is all those which are available only on the red line. Okay, so this is the error, and we would like to minimize this error in the mean sense. In the mean sense, and for that matter, which are the parameters? The parameters are a0 and the a1. Appropriate tuning of a0 and a1 is one which we consider is very critical. So the motive of the linear regression algorithm is to find the best values for a0 and a1 such that the mean square error between the predicted and the actual is minimum. If it is not so minimum, it is acceptable. And for that matter, we have to train. We have to give the learnability to the machine. And that learnability comes in terms of selecting A0 and A1. Am I clear? Next. This is mathematically worked out. And this mathematical solution is a very classic solution. We used to apply these mathematical solutions, and we have studied these solutions in our school days also. What it then says it like this, that given a certain error, like say predicted minus the actual is my error, and if we want to minimize it, we would like to see that what way if we do, the minimization would be considered possible. And for that matter, I understand that this predicted I has two different parameters. One is called as the A0 and second one is called as the A1. A0 is the intercept and A1 is the slope. So if I take up representing this equation as if this is the equation whereupon the outcome is dependent on these values, which is basically the error values, in which the predicted I is written up as A0 plus A1 times X1, whereas this Y is yi. Predicted I is what is available on the linear line. So the linear line equation is A0 plus A1 times X1. So A0 plus A1 times X1 minus Yi is the error. Square of this is my square error. And I would like to minimize the mean of this. That's why I have taken up 1 by n for this. Okay. So classically, we have taken up bringing out the derivation. What the derivation says that if I look for this daba z versus one of the parameters first, let's say daba z by daba a0, and later on daba z by daba a1, I get two different conditions. The first condition is giving me that this is 2 by n predicted I minus yi. This is where I have considered a0 as the parameter. If I consider a1 as the parameter, I get this equation, and the situation I worked out is that this is predicted I minus yi times xi. So I get here two conditions. I get here these two conditions, and that gives me something whereupon da by da z by da by a0 or da by z by da by a1, when they get appropriately equated to 0, indicating that the da by z is a differentiation being equated to 0, I reach to the peak, I reach to the valley whereupon the slope is 0. Are you with me? And the slope equal to 0 is the situation which we call as the optimization. The optimization could be either a maximization or it could be a minimization. But it clearly indicates that this derivative is 0, whereupon the slope is 0 in the situation which is an optimized solution. And we get this optimized solution. This optimized solution will help me to work out this A0 and the A1, which again we consider they are the optimized values for A0 and A1. Are you with me? So I'm trying to optimize the error, for which I have worked out to optimize the parameters, and A0, A1 being optimized. If I select those A0 and A1 parameter, and if I draw a line, what I'm going to get as the average error would be optimized error. Am I clear? This is a very classical example of applying gradient descent formulation. But this could be quite difficult for making my machine to accept it and work appropriately. Can I get some alternative solution which would be easier than that? Yeah, we have some easier solution. Why do we look for an easier solution? Of course, to start with, we may go for easier solution. I would like to take up a solution which need not be easier, but it could be more accurate. So when we look for bringing a computational ability to the machine, we are not more interested on making it more simpler, but we would like to see to it that the result of this is acceptable. And for that matter, even if the computations become complex, we incorporate it appropriately, but we see that the result is acceptable. But I'm going to give you in a step-by-step manner simple solutions to start with first. So in that situation, if I take up this A0 and I compute the value of the new A0 based on the previous A0, I get this formulation. This is what I got in the earlier, no? When I equated this DABA, ZBA, DABA A0 to 0, and I got this as a condition. So this condition helped me to improve upon the next. So next A0 is equal to previous A0 minus this error condition. So this error condition is to be taken up to be modified in the earlier values of it such that I get a new value. Same is the situation when I'm modifying the A1. So new A1 is equal to old A1 minus this times xi. So this helps me get the new value of A1 yielding lesser value of error. So A0 and A1, if worked out appropriately in one iteration, they'll definitely bring the error to come down with respect to what it was earlier. So this is where it said that I had tuned A0 and A1. But is that the tuning of A0 and A1 is done in one go? It is not possible. It is not possible. So what it then is says that with the one go, when I get A0 and A1 values, as I stated, A0 and A1 new values, I got it. With A0 and A1 new values that I got, I once again look forward for looking for what could be the average error. If this average error with the new value of A0 is also not accepted, I go for the next iteration. And the next iteration, I work out the next to next A0 value based on the last A0 value. And this continues. This all continues for recomputing A0 and A1, such that by using this A0 and A1 value, if the predicted I and the yi are acceptable, I stop. If it is not acceptable, I continue iterating. So when the predicted I and yi is equal to 0, let's say if it is 0, then I get A0 new equal to A0 old. In this situation, I get A1 new is equal to A1 old, which means that in that situation, there is no point iterating this computation further. Okay, because I am going to get the new value of A0 and the new value of A1 same as that of the old values, and there is no scope for improvement in that situation. It happens only when the predicted I and the yi are 0. Am I clear? This is a classical example whereupon we borrow some mathematical modeling principles to get A0 and A1 tuned appropriately. Now, this is where I made use of carrying out variation of A0 and A1 iteratively. And that's the reason that it needs a training. Whenever there is a iterations called for. In modifying those values, I look for the training. Each new tuning or the training reduces the error, and this reducing in the error value, if considered acceptable, we stop. If it is not so, we continue. So the training continues for two situations. Either the tolerable minimum error value is not reached to, or it completes the fixed set of training iterations. And for that matter, these are the two situations where the training iteration continues. Let's take up one example. I'm giving you a simple example whereupon the data set is only made up of 5 points. Once again, I bring in this scatter plot utility, and I get this x and y appropriately plotted. I get this x and dy appropriately plotted. All those blue points are the intersection for this x and y. I think visually you can also see that if I draw a line going in between all those points, it could yield giving me the average error, which could be acceptable. It could be near to zero. And for that matter, as stated earlier, computation of A0 and A1 is once again called for. Let's look at it, how we go around this. So the statistical approach, which is not only taking into account the approach as I stated earlier, but I'm looking for taking more of those points on x-axis, more of those points on the y-axis, and bringing out the computation of A0 and A1 if thought appropriately. I would like to see that the results would be more acceptable. Instead of basing the estimation on only few points, if we make use of more number of points, if we make use of massively more number of points, my estimation, the recommendation would be more acceptable. That's the phenomenon, that's the strategy of it. So when I look for this A0 and A1 coefficient to be appropriately tuned through training, I get, what is that I get? I get the average error, which could be near to zero. Let's look to this from the statistical point of view. In the statistical point of view, I determine this value of A1, which is the slope. Statistically, this also we are carried out as an exercise in our school days, and we borrow the statistical averages, statistical standard deviation, all those parameters come to help us rescue from the typical problem. So what it says there, A1 here is equal to sum into xi minus mean xi. So mean xi is the average of all those points on the x-axis. Likewise, yi minus mean yi. Mean yi are all those points which are available on the y-axis. And if I take up this particular equation, like sum of all those xi, mean xi indicating all points on xi, mean x indicate that for all that xi point, what is the average of it. And similarly, I compute it. So if I do it so, this is basically raised to 2. This indicator is raised to 2. So in that situation, I compute A1. This A1 is computed based on, this is all computed based on the statistical variation of the points. I have not borrowed here anything called as what we earlier thought of placing up a straight line, adjoining all those points, and then working out the error of it. I am making use of computation of A1 based on statistical parameters. In that situation, A0 could also be worked out. A0 is equal to mean of y minus A1 times the mean of x. This is all statistically proved. We are not here to give a proof of it, but this being all done, and this was all basic that we carried out in our mathematics in a primary or in high school level. I leave it to you for its proof. So using those statistical principles, I work out A1 and A0. These A1 and A0, they are optimal. They are the optimal. In the earlier situation, I worked out A1 and A0 using a training and that in an iterative manner. Whereas in this situation, A1 and A0 get worked out in one go. For that matter, I have to compute this mean x. I need to compute, for that matter, the different similar statistical parameters also. Okay. So the linear regression, for that matter, gave me from the Excel sheet computation, the value of A1 as pointed, A0 is equal to 0.4. So I'm saying that I made use of these equations only, A1 and A0, statistical part of bringing in the input and working out the output, so that if I make use of this as the equation fed to my Excel sheet at a proper place, I get A1 computed, I get A0 computed. So A1 0, A1 and A0, they get computed, and I make use of this further. In that situation, if I look for what could be the mean square error, I get a mean square error of 0.692. This I get. A1 here is this slope, A0 is the intercept. So with this, I get a predicted value. And if I get also predicted value, and if I work out for that matter, what could be the average error, I get a value of 0.692. Whether 0.692 is acceptable or not, one has to think it appropriately for a typical application. But this is what I could get it statistically, and that in an optimal way. There is another way of carrying out this regression, and we borrow one more statistical concept called as a correlation. This is a relationship between X and Y. Let's look at the first picture, in which the relationship is a linear and is increasing. This is called the positive correlation, whereupon I see that R is 0.4, R is the correlation coefficient, and this is in positive. This indicates that as X increases, Y increases. If R is equal to 0, in the sense that if the correlation coefficient is 0, despite the variation of X, Y is constant. And if I get another situation that if X increases, Y decreases, then I get the correlation coefficient which is negative. Am I clear? This is simple to understand. So with using those things, can I go for something which could be called the shortcut method? There are some shortcut methods, and we make use of the shortcut methods in machine learning. For the simple reason that to start with, to build up the theory, we must gain some confidence that certain theory works. And for that matter, we employ certain shortcut methods. We get ourselves confined to see that the results are acceptable to us, and then we go on refining the shortcut method. So in the shortcut method, what we do is like this, that a standard deviation and the standard deviation for Y and X are computed. Again, in the Excel sheet, these are the simple utilities with which you can borrow this correlation XY, standard deviation Y, or the standard deviation of X. What is that I said? X and Y are those column entries in the Excel sheet. So X and Y are the entries that are known to you. With this, the standard deviation Y, standard deviation X, and the correlation XY get automatically computed. So this is the utility in the Excel sheet with which you get a B1. So B1 gets worked out. Please understand this correlation coefficient varies between -1 and 1 only. -1 and 1. It goes through 0. 0 indicating that there is no relationship between X and Y. -1 indicating that the relation is a negative, and plus indicated the relation is positive. So in that situation, if I make use of this kind of a thing, this correlation X in that situation is typically called the Pearson correlation coefficient. So using the utility available in the Excel sheet, if I make use of this, I get a newer values in which the X and Y correlation is 0.852. And if I look for the standard deviation, I get these values 1.58 and 1.48. Using those for computing the B1, the relationship is already given here. So with this, I get a B1. This B1 is 0.799. If I work out what was it earlier, when it was not a shortcut method, I got a value of 0.8. By using a shortcut method, I got this as a 0.799, which is close enough to 0.8, which means that my shortcut method is also to be considered acceptable to start with. Okay. Let's look at another example. In the earlier two examples, I considered only one independent variable on x-axis to determine its dependency on one of the variables on the y-axis. In the newer example, I am considering that there are many independent variables on the input side, x side, let's say. But if I'm going to look for many of those variables on the input side, only a 2D plot will not be good enough. I need to go for a multi-dimensional plot. Let's look for a 3D plot. In the 3D plot, what I consider over is like this. The example is that we'd like to work out the crop yield based on the amount of fertilizer and based on the amount of water. We do understand that crop yield is likely to go up if amount of fertilizer is increased and the amount of water is also increased. So now I have two independent variables. One is the amount of fertilizer and second is the amount of water. And with each one of these, with a certain slope factor called B1 and B2 respectively, I determine what could be the crop yield. I assume that the crop yield is a linear variable among the amount of fertilizer and the amount of water. This is the assumption. This is the assumption. Okay. So in that situation, we also determine what this B0 would be. So coefficient B0 indicate that if I do not use a fertilizer, if I do not use a water, so when the amount of fertilizer is 0 and the amount of water is 0, what I'm going to get? I'm going to get a crop yield, which is basically the intercept of the y-axis. So with these two being 0, whatever crop yield that I'm going to get is simply called as the intercept of the y-axis. Am I clear? So I get here the values of B0, I get the values of B1, I get the values of B2 also. And in that situation, this is where I made use of multiple inputs and single output for estimating something. So this is a typical real life example. Let's look at, if I take up the scatter plot for this, what I get. A typical data is like this. I have around different 17 observations, and the factor 1 is for the crop, whereupon I use a crop fertilizer. Factor 2 is for the water. So factor 1 is fertilizer, factor 2 is a water, and then I work out the yield. These are all what I meant to say the actual observations. These are the actual observations that made me to give appropriate entry for this in the Excel sheet. Given those entries in the Excel sheet, I call upon the routine for the scatter plot. This is the scatter plot that I get. It's a 3D view. I got this as a 3D view. And you understand from this scatter plot that all those points are not randomly scattered. They are scattered, but the scattering is much more close to a certain line. And I'm looking for drawing that line. This particular line, drawing of a line, is my regression. Okay, so going forward for regression into it. This is in this situation taking up the earlier extension of y equal to mx plus c in the part where we have multiple inputs coming in to determine a single output. I borrow matrix computations. This matrix computation will give me X matrix because of all those on the columns entries of the Excel sheet. 41.9, 43.4, 77.8. These are all the column entries as far as the fertilizer is concerned. 29.1, 29.3, up to 32.9. All these are the column entries as far as the water is concerned. Please have a look at this data. So factor 1 column entries, factor 2 column entries are one which are copied here. So these are all copied here. Am I correct? So this forms the element of the matrix. Okay, so if X is like this, I also get a Y like this, which are all the column entries for Y. So these are the column entries of the Y, which are all copied here. So I get this. So I get here X matrix, I get here a Y matrix. We have also studied this in our high school. We also studied this maybe at the first year of engineering, that given up this X and Y matrices, we compute this beta. And this beta in that situation calls for this X transpose, and this is the inverse of the matrix. So with this, I work out this is the beta. These are basically the eigenvalues. With which what I get? I get here this beta 0, beta 1, beta 2. And this beta 0, beta 1, beta 2 are the one which we wanted earlier. Beta 0 is the intercept on the y-axis. Beta 1 is the slope as far as the x1 is concerned. Beta 2 is the slope as far as the x2 is concerned. So moment I work out all those values, I get y. And what is this y? This is the estimated y. This is the estimated y. Because in all of this computation, as far as the left-hand side is concerned, y is not worked out. Y is estimated. We already know the y. Where is y? These are all the actual y values. And what is this? This is the estimated y values. So a difference between the actual y values and the predicted or the estimated y values will give you error. And our purpose is to minimize this error. Am I correct? So once again, we go for the iteration. We bring in this beta 1 and beta into such a way that the y cap is near to y. So that error is near to minimum, or it could be considered acceptable. So this is what I say is the regression. Linear regression, for that matter, is a simple and a useful algorithm, and this is considered as a very basic step understanding on how machine starts learning with the data. Am I clear? So this is a very simple start there. Um, I look for the linear relationship. I look for the non-linear relationship also. In the non-linear relationship, x and y are related with a non-linear curve. This could be exponent, this could be a logarithmic curve. And I would like to make use of all these scatter plot to be appropriately modeled using a non-linear line. So in place of a linear, if I make use of the model of a non-linear, whatever estimations I worked out earlier would also come true. Only thing is that I had to change my model from linear to that of a non-linear. Okay, so this is where I can rewrite the equation y is equal to beta 0 plus b1 x1 plus b11 x1 square, because this brings in the non-linearity part. Okay, so these are the one which I would like to make use of in working out the y cap. Y cap is the estimated value. We continue working this y cap such that with the modified b0, b1, b111 values, I get this y near to acceptable limit. And for that matter, regression is once again called for. There are many utilities available in the Excel. We do not know what that non-linearity is, but Excel comes to give you a kind of a good rescue operations into it. The rescue operations are like this. Among the different such models which are depicted here on the screen, you can select one such model and try to fix it on the actual data. If you feel that visually this could be acceptable, select it and go for appropriate computations. So this is so simple. So machine learning, for that matter, has now become so simple for the reason that ready-made utilities, ready-made routines are available for you, and you have to simply select one of them and see whether it's satisfied. If it is not so, deselect it, select it another, and continue doing it. Definitely, at one of the points, you see that the model that you have selected for fitting it into the raw data or into the real data is acceptable to you. If it is so, go forward for making use of this for further predictions. This is so simple. Multicollinearity in the regression also comes up in the way whereupon we look for the strong dependencies between the multiple predictor variables. Multiple predictor variables are those whereupon we take up the view of those predictor variables on the input side, and instead of only one, we have a multiple. And in that situation, if it is going beyond 2, actually we are not in a position to visualize it. Because any variation which is in the 3D, we can visualize it. But if it goes beyond 4 dimension, 5 dimension, and like that, we are not in a position to visualize it. But we have the idea of making use of this using a certain mathematical model. So in that situation, we look forward for more such dependencies, and we wanted to see whether among all those, can we look for any kind of a relationship. Though I understand that there is a kind of a dependencies available, if the dependency is exploited in terms of certain relationship, instead of making use of all those independent, we simply make use of the dependency relationship, and we can throw away the independent different components. And in that situation, it is called as minimizing on the number of predictors. So we minimize the number of predictors based on this relationship. What is the result of this? By decreasing the number of predictors, the computations become much more simpler and it becomes faster also. So we make use of this particular facility of bringing in the dependencies among the predictors to minimize the set of predictors. Another way is looking for the regression in terms of classifying whether what we got is of one side or of other side. So this is basically a classification algorithm. So it is used to predict a binary outcome, either a 1 or 0, yes or no, true or false, like that. So this is a special case of linear regression. And in that situation, we are not in a position to work out a predictor line, like a linear line or a non-linear line is not thought of. But what is thought of here is a logit function, is a probability function, in the sense that given an input, we look for its probability to get accommodated for a class called 1 or get accommodated for a class called 0. In that situation, this being only the probabilistic estimation, we are making use of a log it function. It does not assume a linear relationship. Now, it assumes a linear relationship between only the link functions of it and not the actual. It does not use the ordinary least square function for computing the performance estimation, but it makes use of maximum likelihood estimation function, because what I am going to get at the outcome over here is not the exact, but it is a probabilistic. Okay, so these are all under logistic regressions. The logistic function made use of for that matter is a probabilistic function. Log it is equal to ln of p over 1 minus t. P is the probability of the event. So this gives me in that situation the b0, b1, b2 and all the different coefficients for the regression equation automatically, and I make use of this for estimating, recommending, predicting something. Let's look for one such example using the logistic equations. This is also a real life example. Uh, uh, Working out on the spam detection, you get different mails. You do not know whether the mails really are the authentic coming from to you from your friend, or they are not so authentic and coming to you from the foe or someone to who you do not trust. In that situation, it is a problem of what is called the binary classification. Whether such a mail is a spam mail or not a spam mail is to be worked out. So I've taken up some features, whether I see whether the sender is authentic. I look for whether the typographical mistakes in the email are acceptable. If I look for this in deeper way, I also see that whether the different phrases in my email are indicating that these are the offers, these are the prices, these are the free gifts to you. Most likely, all those things are unusual, and all these unusual content in my email are likely to give that email a label as this is a kind of a spam. So this being considered as the input, like the sender is not in the authentic list, the typographical mistakes are not acceptable, and there are certain features in the mail saying that these are the offer, prices, free gifts and something like that. These being all unusual, moment I see all those things in my email content, I declare that as a spam. Okay, so this is how, given these three different inputs and a classification of this as a spam being considered as an outcome of it, this is a typical example of logistic regression. Okay, next. Another example is a credit card fraud detection. Again, the inputs to this is like this. In that situation, we understand whether the transaction is considered to be usual. If the amount of transaction is too high, which was not there in the previous, most probably this is a fraud. If the places where the purchases are being carried out are frequently changing from one place to second place, and that to the places are far away, most likely this is a fraud. You cannot carry out the purchases once in Mumbai and second in US in the same day. It's not possible. Most possibly these are the fraud cases, and being given up these are the instances, we can classify that such a transaction is not a usual transaction but is a fraud transaction. And for that we again use a logistic regression, because we wanted to work out the outcome of this in one of the classes. Either a class is not a fraud or a class is a fraud. Okay, so this is where we make use of a logistic regressions. In all those situations, we must be understanding that a fitting of a curve, a fitting of either a linear or a non-linear curve is more important. If we do not fit this appropriately, we get error. And these errors are like this. This one is called the underfitting, in which I have drawn a line, but most of the lines, most of those real dots are much away from this line, and they indicate that my line drawing is going to ignore the deviation far away from the line. It is the example of underfitting. A just right is one whereupon I have drawn a line. Mostly it is going to touch upon all those real points, and I get the estimation which is more acceptable. But such a thing is difficult to work out. This is difficult to work out, because here I have indicated this with a typical non-linear curve, but I do not know what that non-linear curve is. Only by visualizing this I could estimate some part of it, but most of the time I am not in a position to visualize everything. Okay, I look for a third part indicating that this is overfitting, in which for all the points that I get, I try to touch upon and I work out all those variations for appropriate estimation. What is likely? What is likely that all those points which are looking forward could be a point which is not a true point. It could be a fake point. It could be a noise point. It could be unwanted point. And even if I would like to take use of all those points for estimation, I get a wrong outcome. So these are the underfitting, just right fitting, and the overfitting examples. I am slowly coming to end of my presentation, and I would like to make this platform available for you to throw at me few of the questions, so that I will be in a position to take it forward appropriately. So do you have any questions so far? Please respond to my query. Do you have any questions? To all the participants, it's my appeal. Do you have any questions with you? Please announce it instead of writing in the chat box. Please announce it. Unmute yourself and announce. How do I understand whether you are speaking? Whether you are, yeah,
Yes,
please.
sir. Things are very nicely told, and all basics required for understanding for the beginners, for understanding the machine learning are really nicely taken, sir. So we are very much lucky to have this session. That is what.
Thank you.
No
So
questions.
I'll go forward. Okay. So what is that I'm doing with this? Is that how to minimize the problem? What is the problem? Problem of selecting the curve such that the average error would be acceptable. This is the problem. Okay, so minimizing the error is the problem. And for that matter, what is that we need? We need a data which is authentic data, because we are making use of the data for training. We are making use of the data for learning ourselves. If the data itself is noisy or it has got many outliers into it which are not accepted, we get wrong conclusions. And that's the reason that, as I stated, underfitting, overfitting are those situations where these are not accepted. So how do we come out of it? There is another great, uh, what I could say is a platform available on which all the data points are taken into consideration in such a way that they come to k-fold. They come to different folds. The k-fold is the one whereupon the data is partitioned into k subsets, and we call each of the k subset as a one fold. So what we do, iteratively, we make use of a data in a given fold for training and a data which is not seen in another fold for testing. So this continues. So training is done on one, testing is done on the other. Of course, the one which is done on for training and the one which is done for a testing, they all belong to a particular data of a given set. They do not belong to different sets. Okay, and with this, if we make use of this k minus 1 folds for training and the kth for testing, we expect getting better results. So this is how we go for minimizing the errors. So what are the opportunities there? The opportunity that we would like to minimize the error by selecting the appropriate model. We would like to also make use of an appropriate process, either a statistical process, the logarithmic process, or what I say is a linear or a non-linear mathematical processes. So we have to make use of this appropriately. And then what we do in a process where we are learning on an iterative basis, we have to make use of a certain set in a training. We have to make use of certain in a testing. And for whatever training and testing iterations we carried out, whatever result we would like to make use of this for further validation, we have to have one more set called the validation. So either a training gets followed by validation, in which we say that training is validated, or training and testing gets followed by validation, in which situation testing gets validated. So we need to have a validation for all of our training and testing. Only with this validation, we can put this for actual work. And this is where we then understand whatever model we made use of for fitting for this kind of a recommendation is accepted, and we make use of this in futuristic explanations. So better solutions are usually in time, space, and the context. What does it mean? That I must get a better solution in terms of time. I must get a fast solution. I must get a solution with minimum space. I must get a solution which is appropriate to the context. So these are all those avenues, these are all those potentials available, whereupon this could be considered the opportunities, and you people as a researcher into this area can focus more into this and can develop the algorithms for machine learning appropriately. How do I make my learning to come fast? How do I make my learning to make use of a minimum space? How do I make my learning to come up for adapting it to different contexts? These are all the different avenues, opportunities available. And I worked in this area, and I had, to my credit, some good, what I could say, research work. I could share it with you also. And these are where I feel that it is not that it is too much of a mathematical, too much of a statistical things are taken into account. These are where I take into account more of a logical views to take into account to determine the process of machine learning. And what are those logical? As I stated, if A then B, if B then C, infers that if A then C. This is the kind of the simple beginning in the machine learning. What I said earlier is that in all those situations, we are learning in a incremental mode. In an incremental mode, each of the baby steps that we take into account help us to give a better confidence that we have marked ahead building our learning. In that situation, we are looking for a solution which need not be a perfect solution, which could be a solution which is an acceptable solution. So we are not in a hurry to get at once a perfect solution. We are going to get a solution which is an acceptable solution. So my appeal to all of you is that though there could be a certain perfect solution available only on a paper, you need not perceive like that. You may perceive only for a solution which is a practical solution and is acceptable solution. Which are the platforms? Typically the Excel sheet or the Weka, R programming, Python, C programming, or some of the routines with this MATLAB, Scilab, they could be of great help to you, and you can make use of this such that a critical, complicated way of selection could be all given to the machine, and machine will work appropriately. It is only for you to select what machine has done is within your acceptable limit or not. If it is not so, you have to change the platform, you have to modify it, you have to tune it and continue, get machine learn it better. Look at the kind of a data. The data is what I say in a real way is really something which is not so easily manageable. So what we do? What we do is that for a kind of the algorithm that you are developing, you need to have certain benchmarks. And for a certain benchmark, if you consider everything random, you are not in a position to understand whether what you are getting for improving is appropriate or not appropriate. So what is done so far so is like this, that either we look for a data in such a way that this is a synthesized data which we generate in the laboratory, or we make use of a data which has been used by other researchers in the past. Iris patterns are one such data set which are all available as a standard data set. You can make use of this standard data set. These are all available to you on kaggle.com. You can make use of this kaggle.com, whereupon many such data which is a standard data sets are available. These are all corpus data set, whereupon what that data is also appropriately classified. So you make use of that classified data, you make use of part of that data for training, and you make use of a remaining part for testing, so that you see that what you are going to get as a test based on your training is accepted. Okay, so this is where I recommend make use of something which is readily available and continue improving on it. And only when you get yourself satisfied that your algorithm works well, you apply this for the real. Artificial machine learning, for that matter, is more of a gathering of experiences, is more of learning, is more of modeling, is more of a testing, is more of continually going for developing. And this needs to be done all in an evolutionary way. I am saying it that it must not be thought that it be done over a day. It must be done in an evolutionary way. Our learning is also very evolutionary in the sense that from childhood till this date, whatever we started learning is all by making use of small baby steps in learning. We never took any big jump for learning, for the simple reason that we understand that taking a big jump in learning is likely to give me a hurt, because if I get myself fallen from a big jump, I get a big hurt. But if I get a small jump, and if I get a position which is not so well accepted, the hurt is not that it is so serious. So in that situation, I may make use of only the evolutionary way of going forward in learning, and I expect that your way of accepting, your way of making processing for training testing is all has to take into account to start with all those small baby steps. This is all I meant to say is a evolutionary way of working, not a revolutionary way of working. And this is where we understand that each of the new way which is enriching your understanding is making you to converge on your understanding. This is where if the understanding comes in a converging way, slowly from this you develop intelligence. So this is where I'm looking for convergence in understanding and convergence in intelligence appropriately. This is where the machine intelligence, machine learning comes to rescue you for giving you many of the solutions for your real life problem. Whereupon, as I stated, to start with, in the IoT part, you get a data generated from various sensors. But what to make use of this? So this is where it needs to be summarized for it's a trade. And given a trade, you need to estimate, you need to predict, you need to recommend on this. This is all what I say is a journey of making use of regression for machine learning. I stop at this moment. I have two more sessions to take up further, more deep into the machine learning. But I'll take you deep dive in the machine learning by giving a very clear and a crisp understanding of what that learning is. So these are my references for the current interactions. I made this from the Coursera. I have used some ready-made routines from Vega as well as from the uh, Kaggle.com for certain data set. I recommend you, please join this Jason Brownlee. He has created a blog for all those who are newly entering into the machine learning field. They can join with this blog, Jason blog. This is the typical um, address of it. From today onwards, you could be a great learner in this blog, and you start learning this in a joyful part. A joyful in the sense that he gives you certain of those real life examples. To start with, you understand that this is too difficult for you to resolve upon. But while you break it in a small disjoint problems and tackle each of the disjoint problem using the principle of those regression which I said right now, you get a solution for the big problem. And this is where I recommend you, please join this blog. This could be of great help to you. This is where I come to end of my presentation for the first session. I wish all the best to all of you. Intelligence building is something whereupon this will be a thirst forever. And I believe that each one of you would take active part in building the intelligence, such that your intelligence building will also bring some part of your intelligence to be embedded to the machine. And machine in your absence will give decisions as if you are there, and you get yourself satisfied with those machine decisions. I look forward for your questions, your inputs, and your sharing of experiences if you have in this something to share at this point. So I'm open up to get some queries from your end. Queries, your inputs, your suggestions. These are all important for me. So please come forward.
I request the participants to ask the doubts.
Sir, a very good afternoon, sir.
Very good afternoon.
Sir, I have,
Vinay.
yeah, Vinay, sir. This is Vinay.
Professor Vinay. Professor Vinay? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Sir, I have a doubt. Like, if we have a huge amount of data coming in, how do we choose a particular machine learning algorithm? Like whether we can go for a logistic regression or maybe a linear regression or maybe a certain kind of classification, whether it is depending on the outcome or the data incoming.
My way of looking to give a solution to your problem is like this, that when you are entering into the machine learning for the first time and when you do not know which are the different tools available to solve your problem, I consider it like this, that select a tool which is simple enough. Regression is a tool which is simple enough to start with. So make use of a regression, apply this for a given data, whereupon the data is known to you, whereupon the entire known data is split into two different parts. One part, which is a bigger part into it, is called as a training data. A small part of this is called as a testing data. With a regression as a beginning, if you make use of a learning with a linear relationship, if you make use of your linear relationship, either statistical or in a way which is a mathematical, you understand that whichever model you have selected works well for the testing of it. If it is so, then your model of going in for regression as the starting is okay. If it is not so, select another. What could be the another? There could be many other which I am going to take you for classification, which I am going to take you for a logistic part of it, which I am going to take you for deep learning part of it, slowly. So this could be different other platforms. You may select a tool into it, apply it in the data and see that if it gives you correct result, acceptable result, uh, go for selecting it further for estimation. If it is not so, deselect it, select another. This is where you make a beginning. At the beginning, you do not know which works well. And as I stated that at the beginning, we are not insisting to get anything which is perfect. Perfect part will come provided you get good experience into it. Okay, so in the learning part, as I stated earlier, at one shot, we are not in a position to get anything which is so perfect. So I'm looking only for a near perfect. Of course, for that matter, I must know what is perfect so that I can look forward to what is near perfect. Okay, if I do not know what that perfect is, I'll leave it to my own understanding, saying that whatever I'm working is acceptable to me. If it is acceptable to me, I need to prove it to others that it is also acceptable to others. If it is not acceptable to others, oh, I need to change. And this is how I continue doing it. It is iterative, it is evolutionary for that matter only. So to start with, it has to be evolutionary. I hope
Thank you.
I have given the answer to your satisfaction.
Definitely, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Sir, myself, Professor Sakre, can I speak, sir? Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, Sureka madam.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Actually, I have been working with neural networks.
Yeah.
In the beginning, what I have done is I have taken certain inputs and I have given the target values also. And every time when I run the neural network, you have different accuracies. So for getting the results finalized for presenting the paper or some conference, you have to run so many times that whenever you have the maximum accuracy, that you try to keep the result as it is. And that one which was giving you the maximum, it has to be taken as the reading. That was what somebody had told me, like one of the experts who were doing the neural network work. So what they said is when you are giving the maximum accuracy, you keep those parameters like validity and those testing, all these features. So that graph which was coming for the maximum accuracy was only kept and others I kept on trying. The moment I got the maximum, then I stopped. And that was what I had captured as a picture and then pasted in the conference paper. So that was my difficulty, how to go for the optimum value there. Can we think this is always an optimum value of keeping on practicing, or we sure as short will have some result, like a confidence should be there, no, sir, for the results obtained? So that was what my difficulty in my work I had faced.
Yeah, a very good question. Sureka madam, the solution for this is as follows. Please make a good note of this. What it says is that you have a good result, you said already. You would like to improve upon it. You said that you need to optimize it. Okay. So in optimization of your result, you need to think of what way you would like to optimize it. Optimization will have a different context. One of the context into it would be is a time optimized. in the sense that you are getting a good result. But are you getting good result in a fast way? So whatever results you got so far, if you consider that to come to you fast, the time optimization is the second part. So this is how you can improve on your result. Another way of looking to it is like this, that you are getting a good result. You need to improve on the result. But supposing you would like to make use of space as a context, in the sense that right now you are making a huge space, huge memory space to carry out the computation. Can you think of reducing on the memory space without disturbing the quality of the result? So this is one more optimization. So minimizing or optimizing on the space is one more. Optimizing the time, one. Optimizing the space is a second. And third is optimizing on the context. In the sense that you are carrying out all of your experiments with the known data, and possibly you would be taking up all that by sitting at your laboratory. In the real life situation, the conditions are something which is uncontrolled. When you work in a laboratory, the situations are all controlled. So in a controlled environment, if you get a good result, it's not sure that you get similar results in an uncontrolled environment. In the sense that for a controlled environment, whichever data that you have selected gave you a good result is assumed to be good and acceptable to you. Can you modify it? In the sense that the platform is not for the data set which is all known to you. Look for a data set which is similar but is unknown to you. So under that situation, for the unknown data, if the results are not good enough, you need to improve on the training testing once again. So what does it mean? What does it mean is like this, that whatever training testing you have carried out is for a known data set. If you accelerate it, if you raise it to a level where something into it is not known to you, but you would like to make use of this for improving on your result, you need to see that a part of unseen data is also made available to you for your training. It clearly means it like this. It means it like this, that if you are looking for accuracy on testing, you set accordingly accuracy of training. Please understand that accuracy of testing is always less than accuracy of training. So if you are looking for accuracy of testing, you need to guarantee that accuracy of training must be much higher than this. So this is another way of looking at it. So these are the ways by which you continue on optimizing it. If you do not want to look for a context, if you do not look to the time constraints into it, you don't want to look at the space constraint on it, but you would like to improve on the result. So what are those results? Supposing today you are getting the accuracy to the extent of 87%. Can you increase it to 92%? Can you increase it to 97%? So these are the areas available for which you can think of how to improve on. And the improving on is improving on the tuning of those parameters or fitting the data with a different model. So fitting of the data with a different model will naturally help you to select among the different set of those models which could be considered appropriate. Of course, as I stated earlier, the appropriate is something which I'm not saying is a perfect. I'm looking for that appropriate is only on the acceptable part. So if you're moving from 87% accuracy to that of 92% accuracy, this could also be considered a good achievement. From 92% to 97% is also good achievement. Of course, you need to interpret the results appropriately. So interpretation of the result is also more important, which I'm going to focus in the next session. I believe that I answered your query appropriately.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the wonderful session on linear and non-linear regression models. We are hunger to listen you in the next session. So we'll meet at 1 p.m.
Okay. I'll be
Thank you
available.
so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I request the participants to please stay connected at 1 p.m. Thank you.